Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Rock and Roll. You're on season 2 of the show, and what a fantastic weekend of rugby we have had. We had a bit of a dip against Hong Kong, of course. We'll talk about that a little while later on the show when Abdullah gets here. But of course, the schools rugby, what fantastic action we had dished out. And once again, we're talking about the teams that are newly promoted. Sri Sumangala with their first win as well. What a superb performance from them. I'm sure their rugby team, their rugby players, their rugby entire community is just over the moon celebrating their win over Vidyartha. We'll talk about that in much more detail on the show as well. And we've got a friend coming in to tell us a little bit more about another form of rugby that maybe you guys can try out as well. Stay tuned to Rock and Roll.
Radials. The road is yours.
Hearts racing fast, we feel alive. For miles and miles, let your spirit fly. There's no turning back, the road is yours.
German-engineered tyres for Sri Lankan roads. Seat Car Radials. The road is yours.
You're on Seat Rock and Roll, and we're going into our expert analysis of the games that we saw over the last weekend, and of course looking forward to the games that will be coming up as well. Let's look at the first couple of matches that we had coming up for decision, and that was Royal taking on St. Joseph's at the Royal College Sports Complex. We had a big win for Royal, 33 points to 14, but St. Joseph's will be happy with what they brought to the park that day, Abdullah.
Yes, especially during the latter part of the game. Royal just got off to an absolute flyer. They scored within the first few seconds of the game, and I'm sure at that moment the Josephians would have thought that the floodgates could open. But to their credit, they hung in there. But Royal were just a bit too clinical in this game. At the start, they got what they needed out of it, got the bonus point, got the win. And they also managed to bring a few of their players off the bench and give them a bit of game time as well. So from Royal's point of view, I think they'll be pretty happy with the outing. Josephians would be a little bit disappointed, but at least they managed to bring a little bit of respectability into the scoreline.
Absolutely. I think the Josephian fans would have been a little worried at the start, but then they managed to get a very respectable scoreline. But what Royal have clearly said to all the other teams playing them, Abdullah, is do not kick to us.
Yes, Royal's back three have been pretty impressive. So the other teams will need to be on notice. And they'll probably need to keep possession a little bit closer to them rather than kicking it away. Because if they do, I think the Royal back three have got the potential to counter-attack and cause a lot of damage to the opposition.
Well, we had Royal playing in Reed Avenue, and across town we had their arch rivals coming down to take on their neighbours, mind you. Thirstston College taking on Trinity at the Sugaradasa Stadium. And this was a very interesting game because Trinity really flew out into a lead, 36 points in barely 20 minutes or something. And then suddenly everything fell apart for them. I'm really trying to find out where Trinity lost their momentum.
Yes, it's a bit hard to say. Probably one reason could be that they probably brought some of their reserves off the bench to give them a bit of game time as well. So when that happens, generally combinations tend to get a bit disrupted and the game can become a bit scrappy. But at the same time, probably what they'll probably be a little bit disappointed is the 19 points they conceded as well. So that is something which I'm sure Coach Fazil Marja and his coaching staff will look closely at. But at the end of the day, they'll be happy that they've got a pretty comfortable win and they'll move on from there.
Actually, Thirstston, I thought, played much better when the game went away from them. Suddenly, it looked like they had no pressure on them, and they started playing a little bit more free-flowing rugby, Abdullah, and I don't think Trinity matched up to it as well as they could have. Of course, they rested Sean Altaf, they rested a couple of other players as well that they didn't want to expose because it's going to be a long season. But that being said, you would have expected Trinity to put this one to bed and maybe get 50 points or more. But I really think we need to give credit to Thirstston College for the way they played in that second half. And that's what I'm noticing. A lot of the newly promoted teams suddenly coming to grips with what we need to do in matches. This is the kind of intensity we need to expect. And they're just getting better and better as the weeks wear on. Let's wait and see how one of the other teams that were exactly like that, how they fared. Let's go into our next result. We had Kingswood taking on Zahira. Now, this was the game that we thought was going to be one of the most competitive games of the tournament, Abdullah. But 27 points to 18, you would have expected Zahira to do better in Maradana.
Yes, and the way the game panned out in the first 50 minutes or so, it definitely looked like that. But I mean, full credit to the Kingswood lads. They have been under a bit of a tough time throughout this season, starting from that pre-quarter final close loss to Royal, then another very close loss to St. Thomas's in Mount Lavinia, and then last week giving Isipatana also a good run. So I don't think you can quite call this an upset, but the way this Kingswood team have been progressing this season, I think you'll have to say they've deserved this victory. From the Zahirians' point of view, obviously playing at home, they would be a bit disappointed with this result. But at the end of the day, they'll just have to go back to the drawing board and see what went wrong.
Yeah, and I wonder whether we've seen the best of Kingswood already, Abdullah, because as you said, they started off playing Royal, then they played St. Thomas's, then they played Isipatana. So they've played three of the best schools probably in the competition so far and run them really close. Are we seeing maybe a resurgence from Kingswood?
I think so. Not quite sure of the age profile of the entire team, but compared to the last 2 or 3 years where they really struggled, they were struggling to get a win in the league. Massive contrast. Probably they have been building from that period to now on, and now they seem to be reaping the benefits of that. So it'll be interesting to see how they will progress for the rest of the season as well.
Yes, this was a big must-win game for them. I think they might have considered the fact that St. Thomas's and Isipatana in that group were maybe a little bit too far ahead of them, but this was a massive win, and for Zahira it will be something that they will be very upset about because they too were hoping to get third place in that group. And moving on to Ratmalana, we had another interesting game there. 85 points scored in 70 minutes, Abdullah, and when that happens, neither coach is happy.
Yes, and just watching the way St. Thomas's have been performing this season, that seems to be a trend in most of their games, isn't it? Offensively, they have looked really good, ball in hand, but they have tended to leak a bit of tries, isn't it? So that is something which will probably a bit of a worry for the coaching staff, because as you know, when you come up against the more tougher teams, defenses are going to be much tighter, so you won't be able to score as many points. So then your defense is will need to be on point as well. So it's an area where St. Thomas will probably need to focus a bit more.
To be fair to the Thomians though, they did have a big change in the center combination, so that's something that maybe did affect the three-quarter line defense. But I think Mahanama's broken field runners up there are really surprised pretty much everyone there except themselves.
Yeah, that's right, and they do have some good three quarters, especially out wide, who can cause problems for the team. So although it's a loss for Mahanama, they will probably take a lot of confidence that they managed to get 35 points on a team like St. Thomas's. And it's again nice to see one of these newcomers who have come into the league performing at this level, and they don't seem to be out of place. That is the most important thing. They are competing, and they are knocking at the door of the top teams, and if they can continue to do that, I think it's just a matter of time before they can get a big scalp under their belt.
Absolutely, it's going to be sooner rather than later for sure, because there was a wonderful intercept try for their first try as well. But the moment of the game for me, Abdullah, was in this game, St. Thomas has got a penalty under the posts, and Captain Venuka Vikramasuri didn't think too much. He said, I want a scrum. And when it was their scrum, Mahanama shoved them almost off the ball. They did manage to get the ball, but the Mahanama shove was so good. So looking at this Mahanama team, I think there's a few things that we can expect from them. Let's look at our next result. We had what was a real scare up in Bambalapitiya, guys. The Peterites were maybe on the edge of their seats. A bit of controversy at the end of the game as well, because there could easily have been a penalty that went the way of Science College in the final play of the game, but St. Peter's lived to fight another day.
Yes, and I think there was a little bit of complacency that set in, because again St. Peter's got off to a really good start. At halftime they were comfortable, but Science definitely had other plans, isn't it? I thought in their second half they definitely picked themselves up. St. Peter's probably tended to just sit on their heels and let the Science team run at them. And I think Science, when you give them a little bit of momentum, suddenly they look very dangerous. They got a much more front football in that second half. And it's a game that St. Peter's could have really very nearly lost. And full credit to Science the way they came back in their second half, because Science have had a tough time in this league thus far. But hopefully this match, although it was a loss for them, will give them the confidence to just take off from here for the rest of the season.
Yes, sure. I think that certainly will be what purpose this game serves for Science College, because they had been getting a bit of a drubbing up to this point, but now they know that they can go up against the big boys, and let's see what they can do in the upcoming weeks. Then we had Wesley taking on St. Anthony's, and Wesley will be very happy with this clean sheet in terms of tries. At least they managed to go up to Kandy and do the number on St. Anthony's. So Wesley still going under the radar and showing that they are a team that cannot be taken lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also pretty tough conditions to play in. So given all that, I think they did extremely well to get the bonus point and the win. And at the end of the day, it was a pretty comfortable win. So they never seemed to be out of control in the way the game was moving. And I think they are definitely a team to watch out for.
Yeah, and they seem to have good maturity in that team, don't they, Abdullah? Because they're not playing beyond themselves. They're managing games well. They're understanding when they need to turn it on, when they need to defend, when they need to attack. So that's an interesting aspect which I'm not seeing from all the other teams, except maybe with the exception of Royal and Isipatana up to now. I haven't really seen that level of maturity, just those three teams.
Yes, and also I think another fact is they seem to be a well-balanced side. The forwards and three quarters, they complement each other. There is no particular strength like other teams where the forwards are strong or the three quarters are stronger. They have a very well-balanced side. The forwards tend to combine well with the three quarters in attack. And also they have some good decision makers in terms of their kicking game as well. So watch out for Wesley. I think definitely a team that can cause a lot of trouble if they make it to the championship segment.
Looking at our next result, Diaz taking on Anand in what was a really slugfest of a match. And it was interesting that Diaz managed to pull away in that second half a little bit, but this match could really have gone either way. Abdullah, you were there. What did you get? What was the sense and the feel of this game?
Yes, well, it was built up to be a game between two big forward packs. And in the first half, that's the way it panned out. Both teams were intent on keeping it tight, not spreading the ball too much of the time. But what happened in that second half, I think Diaz realized that they cannot continue to play the way they did, and they started actually running the ball. And when they did that, they started gaining a lot of ground as well. Anand's three-quarter defense was not as good as they would have liked, and they managed to control territory to a greater extent. And with that, they pretty much took Anand out of the game. Although the scoreline was close, 22 points to 18, the second half Diaz tended to dominate that passage of play. So eventually Diaz and Naika ended up as victors, but full credit to Anand the way they came out. Another newcomer who are not found out of place in A-Division rugby, which is great.
Absolutely. They have been really worth their weight in the maroon and gold this season, the red and gold this season. But it was a good win for Diaz. It was an ugly win for Diaz, and one that they desperately needed to get. Let's look at our next result. Isipatana taking on Dharmaja, and although Isipatana emptied their bench in this game, Abdullah, it was a pretty foregone conclusion. But again, they will also not be too happy with those 19 points that they conceded to their 32.
Yes, and the scoreline looks pretty close, but I think Dharmaja actually played pretty well in this game. I have to give them a lot of credit, because thus far their performances have been pretty average. So for them to take on a team like Isipatana and give them a reasonable run for their money, you have to give a bit of credit to Dharmaja as well. And hopefully, again, it's a performance, despite the loss, something they can take forward for the rest of the league.
I think the younger teams, or the teams young to the A division, are playing really well in some of their games. Abdullah, they're getting better and better. But is there an element for some of the bigger teams, some of the more favored teams, for them also to think, for the players, and this is not a discussed subject, for the players to think, okay, I'm going to take it a little bit easy in this particular game? Is there an element of that, do you think?
Subconsciously, yes, it could be the case. But again, that, and also I think what happens is when the coaches also tend to bring their reserves on, it can also have an impact on the psyche of the team where that happens. So all that could just result in the team putting their guard down and just allowing the opposition to run at them. So it's also coaches just trying to manage their squads for these kind of games, isn't it? Because they know that once that super round comes, you have to have your full squad firing on all guns.
Yeah, so it's an interesting man management exercise for the coaches and the administrators as well. And this was the upset of the weekend. What a fantastic performance by Sri Sumangali. It was a pitched battle up in Kandy, and it turned out to be Sri Sumangala's maiden win in the A division. Abdullah, 24 points to 12. It wasn't even close at the end of it.
Yeah, that's right. And Sumangala did indicate that they were going to have a performance in them where they could get that win. And I'm sure it will be absolutely thrilled that they managed to do it against their hometown rivals as well, isn't it?
And a great try as well that they scored, almost an end-to-end one.
Yeah. And it's not the first time. I remember a few years ago, I think when they were playing a friendly match against Trinity, they seemed to score a try like that as well. So they've just got some very skilled runners in them. If they can just improve their physicality a bit more, then there's no doubt that they can compete with the top teams in A division rugby.
Yeah, as we found out in the weekend, the Tuskers found out the hard way that as much skill as you have, physicality really is what counts in rugby. So we have just to an end of last week's results. What an entertaining few games as well. Some teams very close to an upset, just not quite there. But I'm pretty sure, Abdullah, that we're going to see a couple more upsets as this season wears on.
Yes, and especially the teams that haven't performed well in those first 2 weeks seem to be picking their performances up. And there's a great possibility that we could see some upsets in the next couple of weeks as well.
Alrighty, let's look forward to the upcoming week and see who's playing whom and what we can expect.
Hearts racing fast, we feel alive for miles and miles. Let your spirit fly. There's no turning back. The road is yours.
German-engineered tyres for Sri Lankan roads. Seat car radials. The road is yours.
Welcome to In Control. You're on Seat Rock and Roll, and if you know anything about tires, you know that they're built for Europe and now they're here. If you drive a BMW, Merc or Audi, Seat's Europe range is built just for you. German engineering, European performance, and now on Sri Lankan roads. Check it out at your nearest dealer. I'm with Abdullah Yusuf, and we're going to be looking at who's in control at this particular point of the school season with Seat in control. So it's been about the halfway point of this first round of games. We've got 5 games in the first round. We've played 3 of those weeks. Abdullah, it seems a good enough point for us now to look at the group standings and see who's doing what. Here's Group 1A, Wesley and St. Peter's. Those 2 teams are going to be playing later on this week. But looking at Diaz and Anand, they may just have a chance if results go their way, perhaps, for Diaz.
Yes, Diaz have an outside chance. The good thing is to a certain extent their destiny could be in their control because they have a game against St. Peter's as well. So they have a chance, but other results have to go their way as well. So as of now, Wesley and Peters seem to be the teams that are in control in this group.
So 2 unbeaten teams there in Group 1A. Let's have a look at Group 2A and see who's in control there. So we have St. Thomas's and Isipatana. They've also been unbeaten. They've both got maximum points out of their games. Unfortunate for Kingswood, they've come really close, but no cigar for them. They've got half the amount of points of the team just above them. And Zahira, with that loss to Kingswood as well, they've got just 1 win among Kingswood, Zahira and Mahanama. Dharmaja bringing up the rear, playing a good game against Isipatana last week. But if you're looking at Mahanama, Abdullah, there's a chance of an upset for one of those top 2 teams, I think. Well, they've managed to get, St. Thomas's have managed to get past them, but Kingswood, Isipatana, Zahira, all of them could come a cropper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially against Kingswood and Zahira, they definitely have a shout. There's no doubt about it. They definitely have the players. But again, to make it to the championship, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult because St. Thomas's and Isipatana seem to have that under control.
So it looks very much like the Thomians and the Pathanians will be the ones going through from Group 2A, and they have their destinies in their control. Let's look at what we have in Group 3A. Do we have anything a little bit closer? We have Royal and Trinity again sitting pretty at the top of the table, 18 points each for the two of them with 3 wins under their belt. And of course St. Joseph's with 2 bonus points in their losses as well, Abdullah. So that's helped them to get up to 10 points, but still a little bit too far to maybe try and get to that second position.
Yes, there's a crucial game for them against Trinity that's coming up. So they'll need to get a good win against Trinity, and as well as expect some other results to go their way as well. So here again, Royal and Trinity seems to be the teams that are in control.
Well, we've come to the halfway point of the season. We've got a couple more games coming up before this round of the league stages concludes. But at the moment, we've got the top 2 teams who have their destiny in their control as we go into the Cup, Plate and Bowl championships of the A division.
Seat Car Radials. The road is yours.
You're on Seat Rock and Roll, and we're looking at PodHubMatchup.com. What have you guys been doing when predicting the results on PodHub Matchup? So hopefully you have been getting everything right, but of course Sri Sumangala had other ideas. They really set the cat among the pigeons, and this segment of course brought to you by Seat, where you get to control your destiny in making these predictions, just like Seat controls your cornering on Sri Lankan roads. Wesley versus St. Peter's, that's the match we've got coming up next weekend. That's the big match we've got coming up next weekend. And it's also the closest prediction margin of the week, 43 versus 57. Unfortunately though, Wesley fans are not getting behind their team, because if I was predicting this, I would certainly say that Wesley are front runners to win this game. So it surprises me that St. Peter's are leading with even a margin of 14%, but still, that's something that I find very interesting from this big match that we've got coming up for you on the 28th of June, that's Saturday. Let's also look at St. Joseph's and how they're doing. So they had a result against Royal College, which wasn't the best result, but still, they ran Royal College closer than I think they would have expected. As a result of that, what we're seeing is the St. Joseph's fans are backing their team hard. And despite Trinity's dominance this season, they stand only a 60% chance, according to you, of winning this match. That's an interesting statistic as well. Trinity, can you show that you're worth more than that? Then, of course, we had an upset last week. Are we going to get another one this week as well? The only reason that this match will be termed as an upset is because Mahanama are a newly promoted team. Kingswood have been in the A division, their previous league champs. Obviously, everyone expects them to be the winners in this game because they've shown some good form early on as well. But if you look at the one statistic that you can draw parallels between both of these teams, it's their performances against St. Thomas's. Mahanama and Kingswood both ran St. Thomas's very, very close. And as a result of that, I think Mahanama have really picked up confidence. Kingswood, after losing to Isipatana, will show that they desperately want to win and make sure they advance into the next segment, not in the top 2, but at least in the top 3 or 4. But this could be an upset. It's a very, very interesting game to watch in segment B of Group 1. So don't forget, if you want to get predicting and stand yourself a chance to win 2 Seat tires from our sponsors as well, and a 100,000 rupee grand prize for the person who gets the most amount of guesses right, you can predict on podhubmatchup.com. Don't forget that you have to predict this weekend's matches by 12 o'clock on Friday, and you can keep continuing to guess the next weekend's matches as long as you like. So get predicting on podhubmatchup.com.
Seat Car Radials. The road is yours.
Welcome back to Rock and Roll. We have a very special guest with us on our guest spotlight this week, and we are talking about the social side of rugby, a different side of rugby. We'll talk about the 15-man game a lot. We talk a little bit about the 7-man game, but this is about touch rugby. And I have with me the president of the Sri Lanka FIT Touch Rugby Association, Mr. Mas Savangan, my good friend, joining us on the guest spotlight. Good evening, Mas.
Good evening, Shanaka. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great to have you on board, mate. And tell us a bit more. We all know about tap rugger. Everybody plays
Sure.
tap rugger in school. Everybody plays tap rugger maybe after school as well.
Sure.
But touch rugby, what's the difference?
Sure. So let me just set some context as well. So in Sri Lanka, we love our rugby and we play a lot of touch, especially after the physical game, after school, club. Many people look at touch as the next step. So when I moved to India about 2 years ago, I was introduced to FIT rules touch, which was similar to what we play, but the rules, there were certain variations to the rules. For example, you have to go back 7, not 5 meters. There were, for the mixed version of the game, you had 4 guys and 2 girls running substitutions throughout the whole game, playing on a big pitch as well. So there was a lot of cardio being exerted there as well. So it was a completely different game. So when I was in India, that was the version being played by the Bangalore Rugby Club. And they wanted to see whether we could expand the game in Sri Lanka. So when I moved back after my 2-year secondment, I started initially gathering people who were interested in starting a new sport. Now, mind you, this is something new to Sri Lanka, because while we were well acquainted with rugby, the FIT rules, getting women to also join was something very new. And that took a lot of convincing. So initially we started off only our first practice with about 7 people, 4 guys, 3 girls. Again, girlfriends, wives, anyone who we could just drag along. And fast forward about 6 months down the line, we have on average about 40 people turning up to any given practice on a Sunday.
I think that's more than some first 15 teams too.
Yeah, so, and what really impressed me was the number of ladies who were interested in joining the sport. They love it, they've embraced it, they've come a long way. And the beauty is they learn fresh, whereas many of the guys, they had to unlearn their rugby skills and relearn a new sport, whereas the girls just took it up fresh.
Yeah.
So I think, so that's basically a background of what touch is.
Okay. And when do you guys train? Where do you train?
So we practice every Sunday at 3 o'clock at the Thirstston ground. Surprisingly enough, that's been, or we would like to call it a home ground now, because we've been practicing there for the last 6 months. So if anyone would like to come and join us, all they have to do is get in touch with me, and we are more than happy to have them. We have one rule though: for every gentleman who comes needs to bring a lady as well, because we want to maintain the ratio also. And this is a social club. We're not only looking for players who have played rugby at club, school or international level, but we're looking for anyone who likes to start a new sport, because this is open to everyone that wants to try something new. And FIT is something that was born in Australia. The World Cup is happening in about 2 years in New Zealand. And we have aspirations of perhaps sending a team there.
Right.
So we're building towards that. We may be miles or light years away, but we're taking it slow, growing it organically, and seeing what we can come up with.
So there is a World Cup for touch as well, Mas. I've seen some clips as well, some wonderful stepping ability that these guys have. And the fullback that played for the New Zealand under-85s team was also a representative of the New Zealand touch team. So there is a lot of cross-pollination that happens.
Sure.
So tell us a bit more about Sri Lanka's plans in this sport. How are you going to grow, and what's the aspiration?
So what we've done is, I am one of the co-founders of this movement or community in Sri Lanka. What we've started, or what we've initiated, is to register it as a sport, because it doesn't fall under the purview of rugby union. It is, if you looked at the resemblance, it's more related to rugby league, which we don't have a federation in Sri Lanka. So the first thing that we are planning to do, or we've already initiated, is to start and register ourselves as a federation here in Sri Lanka. Continue with our practices, grow this not only in Sri Lanka, but in the other regions as well. We have folks from Australia, from the FIT community, coming and running camps in July, just to spread the word, because we see the potential in this as well, because you don't need size, gender is not an issue at all in this sport. You can have a mixed game, you can have a women's game, you can have a masters game, open, teenagers, teens, so there's a lot of scope for this game. So we're really hoping this picks up, and hopefully we can grow this and take a team to the World Cup. That's our plan.
And seeing the footwork ability of most of our players at school and club level, Marcy, at the elite level, we do really stand a chance of competing with the big boys.
Precisely, yeah. So we're seeing a lot of Sri Lankans who are living in New Zealand, in the UK, as well as in Australia, who are making it big in this particular version of the game. There was one gentleman I was introduced to who represents Australia, but he is of Sri Lankan origin, and many consider him as one of the best FIT touch players ever. I'm hoping to be introduced to him really soon, because we could really use him as a brand ambassador for Sri Lanka Touch. But he's of Sri Lankan origin, playing in Australia, representing the country.
And tell us about the tournament that's coming up.
So on the 5th of July, which is a Saturday, we booked into the Royal Complex. It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, runs until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have teams coming from India, Bangalore, as well as local teams. So we're hoping, so this is our first tournament. The officials are coming down from Australia to officiate the program. It's very exciting because it's 6 months of practice sort of culminating to this tournament, and all the teams are excited. We're getting a lot of mileage now, so there are so many other players, teams reaching out saying, can we join the tournament? Can we also join practices? And we're just pushing back right now, saying, listen, after the 5th, because we've already demarcated the teams, right? But we're seeing a lot of mileage being created right now, and really excited. It's our first tournament, the first ever FIT tournament in Sri Lanka. So that's something that we're really anticipating, and everyone's thrilled that this is happening.
And it fills a nice void, doesn't it, Mas? Because in Colombo especially, and I'm sure you're planning on moving to Kandy and Galle and other places as well, there is a huge dearth of social sports after you leave school.
Correct.
People who have played sports in school, there's nowhere to really go if you can't commit time to getting to the elite level. So this is a nice segue into that.
Correct, yeah. And so many of the players, I would say 60 to 70% of the players are interested in rugby, but they haven't really played rugby at a school or club level. So they're new to the sport. They always wanted to, but didn't find an entry point. So this is something that provides them with that opportunity. And like you rightly said, there's a void in terms of social sports. I think paddle is something that's picking up, and that's really great. So this as well is something that's open, and we would like to grow it in Colombo, because there are a lot of people who are reaching out to us, maybe extend our club to some other regions, some other districts as well. But then again, like I said, we want to grow this organically. When we started this, it was very easy to give up, because there were days where it was raining, there were days where people didn't turn up, and we said, listen, we can just call out practice, and then the momentum would have dropped. We just said, no, we need to be consistent. We need to run this, whatever happens on a Sunday, whether we have 10 players or 20 players or 5 players, we're going to do this. And right now we're seeing, we're seeing some benefits by doing that, because people are now being consistent. They're really excited. More people are reaching out to us and asking us about this sport. What do you do here? What is FIT? Is it like touch we play here? So we're really excited about it.
Nice. And so you're encouraging people to come, fathers, daughters,
Yes.
brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, the whole lot.
Yeah, so one of the really nice things to see is we're seeing husbands and wives play in the same teams, girlfriends and boyfriends. And remarkably, one thing that really resonates a lot is fathers and daughters. Because one gentleman who comes and plays, he said, I always thought I'll play rugby with my son, but I never thought I'll play rugby with my daughter.
Nice.
And we'll be in the same team. So that's amazing.
Fantastic. So the tournament is on the 5th of July, guys. If you're curious as to what it is, please drop down to the Royal College Sports Complex and see exactly what it looks like, whether it's something you'd like to get involved in. And after the 5th, I'm sure there'll be people queuing up at the Thirstston ground, Marcy, to make sure they take up the sport.
I hope so.
All the best to you.
Thank you so much,
See you
Anand.
at practice.
Thank you.
Some things are meant to be felt, not just seen good. At Singha, every curve, every detail is an invitation to experience craftsmanship that transcends time. Crafted with absolute love from materials chosen for their grace and designed to complement the art of living well. Your home is a reflection of your story. Singha is there in the quiet moments and the lasting memories. Built to endure. As time passes, they even feel more closer to you. Quiet luxury, lasting craftsmanship for a stylish lifestyle. Singha Furniture.
You're in Siat Rock and Roll, but this time you're in the recovery room with our good friend Shafin Majid, the Sri Lanka team physiotherapist, as well as a consultant physiotherapist for many other club and school teams. He's joining us once again, as he has been throughout this season of the show, to talk about managing your body and trying to heal it, trying to get it to the best possible way it can be in order for you guys to play rugby and continue not just playing rugby, but continuing to live a healthy life afterwards. Majid, welcome back to Sri Lanka. A bit of a tough weekend in Hong Kong.
Yes, it was quite hectic with the short turnaround as well as the major injuries that we had during the game. Not to take it lightly, but we are treading on the right trajectory in terms of game management and stuff like that. But that gives me also a lot of work to do in the build up to the next game.
Yes, certainly. We've got UAE coming up, so hopefully Majid will be able to have everyone fit and fighting to go when we come up to our final qualifying game against United Arab Emirates. But let's talk about what you said about serious injuries, Majid. There's chronic injuries and acute injuries. Let's talk today about acute injuries. We had one against the UAE as well. Without mentioning names, can you tell us what acute injuries look like and how you react first when you see them, and how the management process goes?
So acute injuries we categorize as a type of injury that is very sudden. So like if you have an injury today, that is going to be categorized as an acute injury compared to an injury that you've had for more than 3-4 weeks. So acute injuries are generally quite severe and could also be very mild as well. So we grade injuries as to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, most of the injuries, and then an acute injury would fall under one of those categories, and then we move on from what type of injury and how bad the injury is.
So just to stop you for a moment, my understanding of the word acute is something is really serious, but what you're saying is it's a suddenness of it, and the severity of it you grade according to that 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly.
So if I roll my ankle, that's an acute injury. How badly I roll my ankle is an acute 1, acute 2, acute 3, acute 4.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
Right.
So then how we would manage those types of injuries, if it's severe, how we would manage it, to how, if it's moderate or if it's mild, we might manage it quite differently. So mild injuries, our whole objective with that would be to get the player to play as soon as possible, minimizing any other aggravation of that injury. Most of the mild injuries we can head on back to play within 3 to 4 days. And if
what examples do you have?
So
of
if
mild?
it's let's say just a back spasm, so let's say someone got tackled and they jerk their back, sometimes it can be a very small injury. It means like your muscle gets tight and locked up. That can last for about 24 hours to 48 hours. As a physio, I can do so much, but I can't give you time. So that time is what generally we take as the time it takes to heal, right? But if you take a severe injury, it's going to be more of, you are looking in the lines of more than 6 weeks, up to about a year, or even some cases 2 years. Yeah. So it ranges from 3 days to about a year or 2.
Okay, so what are the injuries you're talking about for a year or 2?
So we, as sports people involved in sports, we've obviously heard about ACL injuries. So those most of the time require surgery. There's new research coming up, which is not, I would say, solid or written in stone, but it's coming up saying that, okay, we might not need surgery. It is about how we manage it initially so that we don't create more tension onto those tissues, where we can actually heal those ACL injuries back to normal. Because what we see right now, it's a grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 ACL injury. If you speak to an orthopedic surgeon, their recommendation would be to go in for surgery. But now we are seeing more evidence saying that, okay, we might be able to manage it without doing surgery, which helps us as physios, but helps the player as well as helps the school budget as well.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of management, how do you work on it, Majid? Say a player has an acute injury, say it's an ACL, for lack of a better example, and what is your role in this whole process?
Yeah, so the most important part of injuries is assessment and diagnosing what that injury is. So often we get misled in thinking, okay, these injuries are not that bad. If someone just holds their hammy after a sprint or something like that, the coach might say, okay, probably it's just tight. But what we don't see is why did it get tight, and then that the preparation for those previous days might lead to a tear in the long run. So addressing those are the most necessary points. But then once you address or diagnose those injuries, managing it gets a lot easier if you have an accurate diagnosis. Sometimes we might have to go for scans and things like that to get more detailed assessments to treat it a lot easier or better. But as a physio, as a doctor, and that's the most important thing of having a good qualified medical professional on site, say like a team doctor or team physio, a qualified team physio might help in managing those injuries in the long run.
And so the surgeons intervene, they do their bit, and then you take back the player and you manage the rehab?
Yes, so usually let's say if a player goes in for surgery and comes back out, within the first 2 days we might even get them walking if it's an ACL injury, trying to get them walking, get their weight back onto their legs, because what science does is it gives you guidelines on what the limits are. So once you know those limits, you can go up to those limits as much as you can. We used to go by timeline, saying that okay, this injury is going to take 6 weeks, this injury is going to go 4 weeks. But now the scientific method is more of outcome based. If you can do a certain thing, so let's say if you're pulled a hamstring, if you can jog for 10 minutes, your next stage is you're going to jog for 20 minutes. You don't have to wait those extra
timelines.
Exactly, so the extra 3-4 days or even a week to jump to the next stage. And I would say that's where I find myself being so unique in terms of managing those players, is that we are able to push those guys further a lot faster without taking those unnecessary risks.
So is it right to say that the science is a lot less conservative now than it used to be?
That is very true. So scientific sports science starts from a baseline. So it's all these years we've created that basic foundation of science-backed sports injury management rather than just traditional management of an injury. So sports-specific rehabilitation is a bit different to traditional management of an injury. So having that foundation of good scientific evidence and building upon that by years, it might take months, it might take decades sometimes. So just building upon that good foundation of basic understanding of the science gives us, the doctors, even the trainers, the ability to push the player a little bit further and be less conservative in their management if the need comes up, basically.
And we spoke about this on one of our previous shows. We talked about prehab as opposed to rehab. And do you notice in your experience that good prehab does prevent chronic and acute injuries occurring?
Yeah. Again, going back to science, science says that the prehab part is just the icing on the cake. The cake is the strength and conditioning part. So having a good strength and conditioning foundation is what helps us to build upon those layers of the cake, basically. So you might not be able to be bulletproof from any injury, but what we can do is putting ourselves in those end ranges or limits we spoke about before to see how far we can push our bodies. So like in terms of mobility, in terms of stretching, strength, and a new concept of lengthened partial exercises are generally quite recommended in terms of managing injuries as well right now.
Okay, cool. That's been very informative, Majid. We'll talk to you next week as well. Good luck getting all the Tuskers rough and ready for their big match against the UAE. Thanks for joining us.
All right, thanks a lot.
Seat Car Radials. The road is yours. Singer Furniture for stylish lifestyles.
Looking ahead to next week's matches here on Seat Ruck and Roll, I have passed the ball to Abdullah, as you will see, and we will now look at what we have in store. In week 4, Sri Sumangala taking on Thirstston. This is going to be a close affair, Abdullah.
Yes, and Sumangala will definitely come to this game with a lot of confidence. They'll be itching to get their second win as well after their performance against Vidyartha. So it could be a close match. but I probably Sumangalians going in as favourites.
Yeah, I'm sure they would. Zahira taking on Isipatana. This is going to be an interesting clash, but you have to say that given Zahira's performance last week, if they won last week, I would have said, yeah, this is going to be close, but I think Isipatana have just too much.
Yes, either way it would have been the case, but as Zahira, they could be hurting, so I'm no doubt they'll want to come in and put in a performance against Isipatana, but you'd have to say Isipatana will probably pull that one off, and relatively comfortably.
After starting off the season, a real bang when they managed to score that spectacular try to draw against St. Joseph's, Vidyartha have flattered to deceive since then, and I think Royal will be all over them as they play each other.
Yes, they'd probably be gutted after their victory, lost to Sumangala last week. They have to come down to the Royal Complex as well, which is generally never an easy task. So you'd probably back Royal to win that and win that relatively comfortably.
Science may not have done themselves too many favors by running St. Peter's so close, because Diaz will certainly not take their foot off the gas. They will go high intensity into this game. They know they need the win.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is Diaz and Anaki will also need to probably play to their strengths. They've definitely got the better pack, the bigger pack, and they'll probably need to reward their game plan around that and not give too much position to Science, because as we saw last week against St. Peter's, you give Science a little bit of leeway and they will pounce and take it, because they've got some very dangerous runners in their ranks. So DS will need to be careful on how they approach. They've got to be very clinical, very accurate in terms of their forwards play. And if they can do that, then they should get the better of Science.
Well, let's wait and see how that one pans out. Let's look at our other fixtures. Dharmaja taking on St. Thomas's up in Kandy. So the Thomians travelling up for the first time away from their home ground. So that's going to be an interesting test well, actually not the first time away. They went to Ratmalana, but that was a pretty short trip. But this will be up in Dharmaraja. It's going to be a difficult journey for them, I feel, because Dharmaraja are a team that will want to do well in their home ground.
Yes, and they would have taken a little bit of confidence with their performance against Isipatana last week as well. So St. Thomas's will need to be at their best. They're travelling up to Kandy as well. And probably the Thomians will also probably look at their defense, isn't it? That's an area where they'll definitely look to want to tighten things up. And if they can do that, then I think they have got enough offensive ammunition in their ranks to put Dharmaraja away.
Well, they have improved in certain aspects of their game, but the defensive aspects remains a glaring omission at the moment. We have Trinity taking on St. Joseph's. A few years ago, we would have thought this was going to be a really tight fixture, but this year Trinity seems just maybe a little bit too far ahead.
Yes, so they've probably got a bit too much quality in their ranks for the Josephians to trouble them. St. Joseph showed last week against Royals that in certain passages of play that they can cause problems, but whether they'll be able to consistently do it, that throughout the game is the question which they will have to answer. And if they can do that, they could cause a bit of problems for Trinity, but on the whole, you'd have to back Trinity to get the job done.
Fazil Marja took the interesting step of leaving out guys like Shan Altaf in the last game, Abdullah, and I'm not sure whether, well, obviously you're trying to manage your bench, you're trying to manage your players' workload, but at this level of rugby, at schoolboy level, I don't know whether it's so easy to sit out for a week, come back and just hit the straps and for the combinations to go back to what they used to be. That's going to be a bit of an interesting test.
Yes, I don't think he will probably take any chances against St. Joseph's. I think they'll probably field their best 15. Because they'll also probably have a crucial match the following week against Royal as well. So they want to get those combinations going. So on the whole, I think they'll probably play their best possible and available team for this game.
And then we have St. Anthony's taking on Ananda. You have to say, despite the fact that St. Anthony's are one-time league champions, Ananda are they going to be the favourites going into this game?
I think so. St. Anthony's have really struggled this season thus far, isn't it? So Ananda, although they lost to DS and Anaika, they looked really good. They look comfortable in this A division environment. And if their forwards can dominate the Anthonian pack, then I think the game is well within their reach to get the victory.
Kingswood taking on Mahanama. This is an area where we might have an upset as well, depending on who you think the upset is going to be. And I think I would put some money, if I was a betting man, and luckily I'm not because I would have lost a lot of money. Mahanama is probably the favorite going into this game.
Wow, that could be a tough one because Kingswood have definitely would have got a lot of confidence after their victory against Zahira. So you just sense that the Kingswood are a little bit on the ascendancy in terms of their form, seem to have got their combinations right. Just that bit of experience in A-Division rugby could give them a slight edge against Mahanama. But yes, Mahanama definitely have got the players to cause an upset in this match.
Well, two peaking teams. Let's see how they work out. And then, of course, the match of the weekend, as far as we see it here on Seat Rock and Roll, Wesley taking on St. Peter's, and St. Peter's having had a scare last week against Science College, and with Wesley beating St. Anthony's quite comfortably. It's going to be two contrasting requirements going into this game.
Yes, and probably thus far the match of the season in terms of two very good teams going up against each other. Wesley, you'd probably have to say, have just cruised through to this phase thus far. They've been really good in the way their forwards and three quarters have combined with each other. St. Peter's have tended to rely a bit more on their three quarters this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how St. Peter's cope with that Wesley 8. If they can win that battle up front, or at least negate the threat of the Wesley 8, then I think they do have a chance. But in this game, Wesley just seem to have the better all-round team thus far. So it's really going to be interesting to see who comes out on top, because at the end of the day, it's a high-pressure game, and the team that manages pressure better will probably come out, will obviously come out victors.
Well, one thing I'm going to throw at you, Abdullah, St. Peter's will say, okay, we've handled pressure last week. We managed to come through that pressure, maybe with a little bit of rub of the green going their way. Wesley, you haven't really been pressurized this season. And although you've won your games comfortably, you haven't really been tested. Is that something that Sanat Martis will be telling his boys?
Yes, but at the same time, I think Wesley, they've just been in absolute control of the situation in all the games they have played. And you just sense that they have got the players, when under pressure, who can rise up to the occasion, because they've got a few key players in key positions who can absorb that pressure and execute as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out against St. Peter's. It's not going to be easy. St. Peter's will definitely, being defending champions, will definitely want to get a win and go into that second round as the unbeaten team. So I think all in all, it's going to be a really interesting game.
It will be, and remember that St. Peter's are away from home. They're away from their Bamba Brigade, or their Bamba Fortress, as they would like to call it. And remember that this is one of the games that's going to count for the Super Round as well. Wesley and St. Peter's, what they do in this game is definitely going to count in the next round of games, because they're the top two teams in their group and will be looking to advance. So that's what the action is that we've got on offer for you in the upcoming week. Abdullah Yusuf, thanks a lot for joining us. You're on Seat Rock and Roll. We'll see you next week.
Seat Car Radials. The road is yours.
Thanks a lot for joining us on Seat Rock and Roll. We've had another fantastic edition of the show, giving you something to think about in terms of getting your involvement with rugby as well. And we're looking ahead to Sri Lanka playing the UAE in a couple of weeks' time as well in the Rugby World Cup qualifiers. But thank you to Seat for making this show possible, and also for Singha Furniture, our furniture sponsor. And also make sure you read our column on the morning, the daily morning. That's where our column is. Click on the QR code after you've read the column, and you can be brought right back here onto the show as well. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you next week.